Welcome to the Line Movement MMA betting show. I'm Daniel Levy from Best Fight Picks and Half the Battle, joined now by Dan Tom from MMA Junkie and the Protect Your Neck podcast. Today we're going to be talking UFC Vegas 16 because Jack the Joker Hermansson is taking on Marvin the Italian Dream Vettori, a middleweight showdown. The winner is going to be one step closer to that elusive title shot against the great, the undefeated Israel Adesanya. And you know this is going to be a serious main event fight here Saturday night, Dan Tom.
Yeah, man, I would argue this is one of the more intriguing, tougher stylistic matchups that could have been put together of the combinations, and perhaps my favorite one to break down. And we'll get into why it's a really intriguing matchup on both sides here.
Yes, sir. And I gotta let the Canadian listeners know to go to blitzbet.eu. Now, Dan Tom, let's get right down to business, my friend, because the main event, we got Jack the Joker Hermansson. He's in an interesting spot, man, because initially he was supposed to fight fellow top 5 contender Darren Till. It was going to be a top 5 showdown. It was going to be the striking of Darren Till versus the grappling of Hermansson. You know exactly what both guys wanted to do. Then Kevin Holland filled in for Darren Till, and that was going to be an interesting fight too. You know, you got the antics of Holland, you got the length, everything he brings to the table. He's a very active guy. Now we got Marvin Vettori. Here's a guy in Marvin Vettori who he says that all the top 15 guys want no part of him. He says that everybody's been avoiding him. He's been looking for a fight. Well, now he's got a fight Saturday night at the Apex in Las Vegas, Dan Tom.
Yes, he does, man. And this guy is hey, man, maybe it's because I'm part Italian, but they are a passionate bunch, man. And this guy's passion has been felt in this pandemic era. He's had some bad luck, of course, with some rebookings. Got to take out some of that in a quick first-round finish over Carl Roberson earlier this year. And I don't think he got everything out even from that camp. You know what I'm saying? So he's got a lot of energy coming into this camp. He's got a lot of momentum. Looks to be in good shape. But, yeah, he's coming in hot.
So real quick, I just want to learn about my co-host and my good friend a little bit more. So you got some Italian in you. So are we talking half Hawaiian, half Italian?
No, about half, man. I initially thought it was a quarter, but we found out it was a lot less once we found out what my mother's side, who's half Japanese, half Caucasian. We just wasn't sure. We weren't sure what the exact mixes were. A little bit of Nordic, a little bit of Irish in there. Shouts to those sides as well. But yes, there is Italian, which makes sense with, the family, friends that I've had growing up. And to be honest, my taste buds where it counts. You know what I'm saying?
So you got the best of all the worlds. So I was going to say the best of both worlds, but you mentioned like 4 or 5 different ones. So it's the best of all worlds. That's pretty damn awesome. So anyways, man, about this main event, because look, speaking of, multicultural, Jack Hermansson's going in there with 2 flags as well. He's got Norway. He's got Sweden behind him. The guy speaks perfect English as well. You got a guy in Marvin Vettori who moved from Italy to the United States. So it's a beautiful thing to see. Now, as far as their styles are concerned, Jack Hermansson said publicly many times, he said, I have the best ground and pound in the UFC. And I'm pretty damn confident that he wants to get on top of a guy like Marvin Vettori. He wants to display that. The issue is, Marvin Vettori actually was the last man to take down the great Israel Adesanya. He actually did it in the 3rd round of their fight. Now, I gotta talk about that fight for a sec, because you know how we've been shedding all over this judge named Chris Lee?
Yes. Yeah. I know where you're going with this. Go ahead.
Well, because of this man named Chris Lee, forever on the record, it states that Marvin Vettori went to a split decision with Israel Adesanya. Now, we all know that Marvin Vettori did not win 2 rounds in that fight. That fight should have been a unanimous decision, but due to the fact that it was a split decision, I feel like he's got a little bit of rub and hype because of it. Don't get me wrong. We're going to talk about his skills. He's a very talented guy. He's well-rounded. He's been winning fights. We'll talk about all that in a sec. But I still feel like to this day, people talk about how, that's the guy that went to split decision with Israel Adesanya. And it's like, guys, it wasn't really a split decision. It's that same judge, Chris Lee, that's been messing up all these calls that we've been seeing these past, this whole pandemic. So do you at all agree with me when I say that he got a little bit of unnecessary or maybe even unfair rub or hype just due to the fact that that fight was a split decision?
Yeah, if you're basing it on the split decision, if you're basing it on the fact that, Vettori's fight IQ, especially at that point, what is he, only 22, 23? Maybe if he goes to the takedowns earlier, he's able to beat a more green Adesanya, right? And perhaps maybe he did miss his opportunity, but that's a lot of shoulda, woulda, coulda territory, and that's hard to put your flag in, and you really can't put your flag in, right? Um, that being said, you're also really far off base if you're going to base it off the split decision. It was crazy. Chris Lee was actually on this really good run where I can't remember, but perhaps it was probably pre-pandemic. But this year, I think I tweeted, I'm like, I've been on the same side of Chris Lee a lot of these times, and I forgot that this was Chris Lee was the culprit here, and this, of course, was before his recent really bad run that Dan referenced, right? So boy, did that tweet not age well for me. But yeah, I disagree with that. What surprises me more than the card, and I know fighters are going to believe themselves in themselves. They need to, right, Dan? But if you look at Vettori, he was like genuinely believed he got the decision, and that kind of troubles me. And again, I think that curtails to not so much fighter passion, but again, not picking on my fellow Paisan here, but like it's that Italian passion. We've seen, again, look at Italians in the middleweight division, Alessio Di Chirico, who has been on the losing end of split decisions, and maybe they shouldn't even have been a split. And look at that guy. They react the same way. They get pissed. They're jawing at their opponents after. The security's having to come in and break them up, even though it's a clear win or a clear loss. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like I keep mentioning these things. I'm not trying to ruffle feathers or, in a very sensitive area, I'm definitely not trying to poke where I shouldn't be poking. But you say it too, Dan. When we're talking about where our wallets are from a betting perspective, I know a lot of bettors watch this show. Thank you. Like the video, subscribe down below. But now he's got a 5-round fight, and I'm trying to outline here is I don't know how much this guy's passion and kind of hard wiring to go forward. If he doesn't get a finish here, I kind of worry about his pacing.
Well, you talk about getting a finish and pacing, but it's actually Vettori that usually goes to decision in most of his fights, Dan Tom. I know the last one was a first-round submission over Roberson, who's been submitted in the first round more than once, but for the most part, it's actually Vettori that wins these fights via decision. But to echo your sentiments, my friend, one of the biggest criticisms that we've had for Vettori is that he tends to slow down in a lot of these fights. And you don't want to slow down against a guy like Jack the Joker Hermansson. When you talk about a guy like Hermansson, he's one of the most unique enigmas in the top 5 of the middleweight division, because obviously very physical guy. I mean, he's got the physique, he's got the height, he's got the reach, he's got the size, he's got the whole bit. The skill wise, I mean, you talk about that guillotine choke, you talk about that ground and pound. Now he's pulling off heel hooks against top 10 guys, you know what I mean? But something that really impressed me in that Jacare fight was that we don't often give people credit for submission attempts. For me, it's like, oh, you got a submission attempt. Big whoop. He didn't finish the submission. Like, who gives a shit? Why are we even bringing up a submission attempt? When you go for a submission attempt against a guy like Jacare Souza, and it's pretty damn close, and he has to, go to the reserves to get out of it, like, that's pretty damn impressive. And not to mention, he was also out there blast doubling a guy like Jacare Souza, which one doesn't simply do. And you take it a step further because he kind of emptied the clip in the first and second round. And in that third round, Jack started to slow down. Jacare started to put it on him a little bit. It started to seem like, hey, Jack had a good early run, but now Jacare is about to take over. In the 4th and 5th round, Dan Tom, Jack Hermansson had more output than he did in the 1st and 3rd rounds. So I think that this is a guy that gets better as the fights progress.
Yeah, man, I agree too. And correct me if I'm wrong, it wasn't the short notice like this, 1 week short notice, so to speak. And yes, Vettori is looking in really good shape, by the way, and is scheduled to fight the aforementioned Jacare Souza just a week or two past this scheduled date. So I'm not trying to make too much of it. Point is, back to your sample size of Hermansson's fight with Jacare, that was on a shortened camp too, if I'm not correct. So even though, like you said, which is probably a reason why I came in not just leaning toward Vettori, like I had to stop myself from hitting the place bet button before I finished my tape study. Thank goodness I did, Dan, because when I looked at it, like you said, right, he has the more decisions on paper, but when you look at the pacing, he's even in like victory or defeat, good performances or bad, he is showing to even start tiring within that first round. And his sample size is weird because Yes, he is still capable of having strong second rounds in losses to Antonio Carlos Jr., or the other loss you mentioned against Israel Adesanya. He has the strongest round as the third round. It almost makes no sense, right? But in general, his pacing is a bit suspect. Now, Vettori's been doing a lot of work on his boxing, and it's not Conor McGregor-esque, but yes, he's got that southpaw pull counter. He's been relying on more, and it's smart, right? It's showing some fight IQ, which is good. Some of the things you tend to worry about a hard-headed youngster like Vettori, right? And so when he's having to pace, now he's sitting back and countering. He's pop-shotting, and I like it. However, he's going to have a guy pushing a grappling pace. And again, you can't really do MMA math. The resume doesn't speak for it, but who has really in real time actually put a strenuous grappling pace that Hermansson's going to be putting on Vettori? And the most relevant guys you can point to is Cesar Ferreira, who fought a completely different fight. We could talk about Ferreira's fight and Hermansson. You know the sample size and example I'm going to bring up, Dan. But that was a complete different fight where Ferreira only shot and went 0 for 5 in takedowns. And of course, the All-American wrestling credentials of what's his name, who went to TriStar, Andrew Sanchez. But Andrew Sanchez only shot 2 takedowns in that fight. So those guys had to fight at Vettori's pace and were not as skilled in that type of game. So yeah, I agree with you. I think Hermansson, if this thing has to go long, he will be the fresher guy, and for that reason, I think he's got more ways to win this fight, both early and late, as the underdog here.
The guys that worry me the most against Hermansson are heavy hitters that are athletic, that can stuff his takedowns, that can just put the pain in every single shot they throw at him. If for example, if Paulo Costa was filling in for Kevin Holland and he was going to fight Jack Hermansson, I got Paulo Costa. If Robert Whittaker was filling in for Kevin Holland, he was fighting Jack Hermansson, I got Robert Whittaker. When you look at the history of Marvin Vettori knocking people out, he's knocked 2 people out. One of the guys he knocked out has 10 knockout losses. The other guy he knocked out has a professional record of 4-12. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that Marvin can't come out here and knock Jack out, but it's not the same as a Paulo Costa or a Robert Whittaker or a Thiago Maeda or a Jared Cannonier who did go out there and knock out Jack. You have to be one of those guys, one of these scary knockout artists, one of these super athletic guys to get Jack to that point. I'm not convinced Marvin is that guy. Now, Jack, we got to talk about the mental side of things because, he's been one of these guys that's been very open about, his struggles upstairs. And I got to applaud him for it, to come forth, to be honest, to be truthful. He's very brave. So I got so much respect for that. But if he wakes up on Saturday not wanting to be there, Marvin's not the guy that you don't want to show up against because Marvin is well-rounded. He's a big boy. He's hungry. He's durable. That's one thing about him. He's never been finished. He's extremely durable. Like Israel Adesanya said, he's got a blockhead. So he's the kind of guy, you hit him with your hardest shot, it hurts you more than it hurts him. You know what I mean, Dan Tom? So what Hermansson needs to do is on the feet, he needs to kind of point him, kick and run, punch and run, kind of just make the strike count go up a little bit and then mix in the takedowns, time those level changes, get in all those entries. And from there, that's where I think that actually Hermansson can hurt Vettori. But getting there is a different story, Dan Tom.
Yeah, I agree. And that I like how you started that off too, as far as the common threads when you look at Hermansson's losses. Now, the only person that maybe doesn't fit the knockout puncher explosive athlete in the equation is Cesar Ferreira, who is an explosive athlete, but maybe not known as a knockout puncher, right? But in that was one of those situations, along with the other Thiago Santos, and not taking anything away, especially the Santos loss, which I'll touch on here in a second. But those both took place in Sao Paulo, a place where, folks, you guys remember what fights with audiences were like? Remember what fights with Brazil were like? Remember that, folks? Especially it must feel like more nostalgic and more emphatic, this example now, even perhaps to retrace that. But when you're fighting, Cage Warriors, which is a great organization, but you're fighting more on European home soil, and you go to that rowdy Brazilian soil in that first time in just your second UFC fight, the Vimoheias are in full effect. It can be troublesome, and we saw that. It was a really uncharacteristic loss, and he just gets taken down at kind of the perfect point where against a second degree black belt like Ferreira, he almost gave him the behind the elbow control with the head. for the head and arm choke, and Fajeda just really had to finish it and wind it there. So whether it was Jack crumbling and or just being unlucky, it could have been a little bit of both, to be honest there. Then, of course, he goes back to Sao Paulo to try to conquer his demons. Again, you got to respect him, even though it didn't go his way against a dangerous guy like Maheta. Obviously, Maheta ices him, but Maheta ices him with an uppercut. Page note that strike. And of course, Hermansson's third try in Sao Paulo comes against Thales Leites, where not only does he overcome, the fast finisher gets a late finish, not only does he overcome his anxiety, but he also overcomes broken ribs in one of my favorite performances for you to fire up the Fight Pass for. Sure, he looked like he stumbled once again once the Copenhagen, for whatever reason, the way it was marketed, they were giving him like the hometown treatment. Plus, again, like Dan said, you put him again there opposite as well with an explosive knockout puncher with Cannonier, and in returns the uppercut for a level-changing guy, which the level change is going to be live, like Dan said in this matchup. Uppercut's a great way to deter it. And Marvin Vettori, he does throw knees, and he will throw the uppercut. He will throw them more later in his career. He still seldomly throws them. He doesn't throw them enough for my liking. And I don't know, he kind of reminds me, tell me if this is off base, he reminds me of Sean Shirk, because ultimately he's got the even though Shirk's wasn't underrated wrestling, the crux of his game, like Shirk, Vettori's, is the grappling to get on top. And, he's only, I don't want to say only a 74-inch reach, but he's got Conor McGregor's reach at 6 feet tall in the middleweight division. And he's a really thick boy as well, Vettori. So he's got that Shirk-esque where it almost is like his technique's really good. Like Sean Shirk has really good boxing technique. He doesn't get credit for it, but he didn't have the hardest hands, right? It's like all that muscle he was punching against his body. And I get a lot of that with Vettori. And to Dan's point, the one knockout you can go find on the regional scene, like it was an attritive knockout where the guy had to get kneed in the head a bunch of times. The guy had zero defense, again, a poor record. And even that guy wasn't separated from consciousness, and he was contesting it like, I'm fine.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, when you talk about the muscle shark, Sean Shirk, I'm not going to bring up any USADA stuff. Did Marvin Vettori might have a USADA run in? Am I making that up, or did that actually happen? Because I don't want to.
Yes.
He did, right? Okay. Because I didn't want to throw out any BS accusations, but so, he does have a couple similarities to Sean Shirk. You're right about that. But look, all BS aside, I put the Cesar Mutange fight on the back burner. Jack Hermansson's fight, that is. I mean, look, it was Jack's second fight in the company. You could see his physique isn't even close to what it is now. It's not like Cesar beat the top 5 ranked Jack Hermansson. He beat Jack Hermansson still getting his feet wet in the UFC, and that was when Cesar was in his prime. Whereas when Vettori fought Cesar was 1 or 2 fights away from retirement / going to the PFL, which they call the Pro Fight League, but I actually call it the PED Fight League. You know what I mean? So it gives guys a second win, a second chance at, reinventing their career. So I just feel like they fought them at completely different times in their career. So I write off the Cesar Mutange fight for Jack, but I do not write off the Thiago Santos or the Jared Cannonier fights, because that stuff is going to happen again when like I said, you put them in there with Paulo or with Rob, and that stuff is going to happen again. It's just I'm not convinced Marvin Vettori can bring that out of him. So I got to go with Jack here, man. I think he's the more well-rounded guy. I think he can mix in the takedowns, and I think as the fight progresses, he does better down the stretch. So I got to go with Jack the Joker Hermansson in this one as an underdog, no less.
Yeah, man. Even despite being on the side of the underdog, I do got to say the caveat. I don't know how confident I am, or I would be really, to make a call on either side. But yes, I'll throw in this last stat on the way out. Jack Hermansson is 3-1 against UFC level southpaws, and I'll pick him to go 4-1 this Saturday.
So Dan, Tom, co-main event of the evening. I'm very, very excited about this fight. We got Jamal Sweet Dreams Hill taking on Vince St. Preux, OSP, the ultimate measuring stick if you want to be a top 10 guy in the light heavyweight division, a top 15 guy. I mean, Vince St. Preux, like one of my favorite fighters. I mean, how many good things can I say about him? Second most submissions in light heavyweight history. It was originally the, number one most, but my boy Glover Teixeira just tapped out Thiago Santos and took that number one spot. So now Ovince St. Preux is tied up with the great John Jones. He's tied up with Misha Cirkunov, who, by the way, Dan Tom, turned down the fight with Jamal Hill this Saturday night. So it was they originally wanted Misha Cirkunov in there with Jamal. Misha said, Jamal who? Misha was like, no, I'd rather take Ryan Spann. You know what I mean? The chinny guy that's ranked higher. You know what I'm saying? So a very smart career move from Misha Cirkunov. But look, all bullshit aside, Jamal Hill's my favorite prospect at 205. When you look at all the prospects at 205, all the top ones, they've all had to take their first loss, whether we're talking about Alexander Rakic, whether we're talking about Dominic Reyes, whether we're talking about Michal Oleksiejczuk. I know Dan Tom remembers the kind of hype Michal Oleksiejczuk had, whether we're talking about Alonzo Menefield. So all the Jimmy the Brute Crute, all these guys had to be humbled. And there's one light heavyweight prospect who's still undefeated up until this point, and his name is Jamal Sweet Dreams Hill. Now, I know we can sit here, we can make the argument, hey, he hasn't quite fought the competition. And also another guy who lost, Johnny Walker. He was another one of my big light heavyweight prospects. So they all took defeats. Jamal Hill's the only one that hasn't. And again, we can sit here, we can talk about the level of competition. I understand, but like, even with Johnny Walker prior to him losing, we knew that there were holes. Even with Jimmy the Brute Crute, we knew there were holes. Even with Michal Oleksiejczuk, we thought, hey, maybe he should drop to 85s. Even with, with all these guys, we knew that they got potential, but there's something either missing or something they need to improve upon, whatever the case may be. With Jamal Hill, I've been so blown away by this guy's game, because we all fall in love with the knockouts, right? Like, these are big boys. They can go out there, get these first round knockouts, and that's cool and all. But what happens when fights go the distance? That's what I want to know. That's the true mark of what kind of prospect we're dealing with. Because, I mean, you remember with Rakic, he gets that brutal knockout of Jimmy Manuel. Then they put him in there with Volkan Oezdemir, and he's huffing and puffing in that third round. You remember with Jimmy the Brute Crute, he blows his load against Misha Cirkunov. You saw what happened. Michal Oleksiejczuk, same story against Ovince St. Preux. What I like about this guy, Jamal Hill, obviously, that first round knockout against Klitzen Abreu was textbook, was beautiful, was just, that's what you want to see. But let's not even talk about that. Let's talk about his UFC debut. When you see light heavyweights going out there and throwing almost 300 strikes over a 3-round duration, like, dude, he's got the power of a light heavyweight, but he's got the output of a bantamweight. Like that's something special to me, Dan and Tom. And then a lot of people like to talk about, oh, but he got taken down 6 times. That's what they like to talk about. What I like to talk about is he got up 6 times. He never got held down even once. So this guy's got the get-up game, and his striking arsenal is very, very mature and very well developed. I mean, from the southpaw stance, he's firing off the jabs. He's got a nice 2. His knees are absolutely devastating. He can kick upstairs, downstairs, to the body. He's got elbows as well. And I'm just like, what can't this guy do? So I'm blown away by Jamal Hill. Maybe I'm hyping him up too much. Maybe Ovince St. Preux comes out here and gets another Von Flue choke, or Von Preux choke, as we like to say. But I don't know, man, because like when I look at my power rankings, I see Jamal Hill not being a top 15 guy. I see him being a top 5 guy one day down the line. This is his first big step. He's got to come out here and pass this test. Will he do it or not? That remains to be seen. I think he does, though. This actually reminds me of the Dominic Reyes versus OSP fight. OSP in there with a big, tall southpaw who's kind of got that volume style, who's hard to hold down. I just see Jamal coming out here tripling up OSP on the output. And if he happens to get taken down, I mean, his get-ups are good. He pushes on the head. He gets right back up. He doesn't accept bottom position. And he's got the cardio to go 3 rounds hard. I love this kid, Jamal Hill. I think it's bright skies for Sweet Dreams.
I like how you went through with the prospects, man. That's really interesting setup. And yeah, Sweet Dreams, how long can he hold on to his it's very hard to do unless you're Habib, right? So is this going to be first L time, as you like to say, Dan? And it's going to be an interesting question. I got to say, I'm much more excited about this fight than even the main event, but I'm also less confident, even less confident in my pick here, if that's fair to say, which I think is fair to say. Because again, you can be excited for a fight and not exactly be confident how it's going to shake out. A lot of questions are going to be answered. Now, will it condemn either guy? No. Jamal Hill is young, so of course he's got his whole career in front of him, and OSP is kind of crazy, opportunistic, inconsistent. I love OSP, by the way, but like, let's be honest, you know what I'm saying? Like, you look at his record, he's kind of used to rubber banding. Granted, he's facing a lot of the best fighters in the world, but it's a weird record because you're like, he's almost got 40 fights, but he's only won 5 decisions. So to your point, as far as where usually prospects, at least I would argue like 185 and up, where a lot of them go wrong, especially if the striker variety is, we'll see, what are they gas, or are they explosive, are they knockout artists, are they going to, and I don't get that with Jamal Hill. I don't want to say Jamal Hill is a typical one-punch knockout artist, because I don't think he is. I don't think he has that typical power. I do believe, though, that he can get one-punch knockouts because he's precise. And in fact, I would prefer that out of a prospect at this weight class, because you don't need as much power. You're already a big guy as a former basketball player, right? In this division, precision and technique, I think, count for more. I know I'm biased on those sort of things, but it also lends itself to not gassing yourself out. Back to your original point, how most of these prospects fail, right, Dan? And that was one of the things, is when I went to watch this tape, the most thing I was surprised was Hill. I didn't think down on him. I know plenty like yourself, whose opinion I respect, are high on the kid, but nothing jumped out in my recent memory, right? And so I went back to watch, and I was super impressed. I mean, this kid almost feels like he's been growing up doing martial arts. He does state that he's always had a love for it. He's got a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but you look at the way he's striking and going to the body, which I think is huge. And I think that whether you were picking Oleksiejczuk or not, you figured that Oleksiejczuk body attack was going to be there. And if you go back and watch the fight, it was. However, even a guy who's known for stopping people with body punching like Michal still didn't exactly draw reactions. Now, he drew urgent reactions, which made OSP fight. And, for better or worse, that's the risk you run when you bum rush OSP. You can catch him cold, but you can also, waken the dragon, so to speak. So, and just examining that one step further before I bounce it back to you, Dan, when I do look at who's been able to strike with OSP and get him out of there, yes, I know the Dominic Reyes should be considered a knockout at the end of the 3rd round. Yes, Alir Latifi, before he choked him out, knocked him silly. Okay, so you got to be able to account for those things. But I was surprised, and I always am surprised, is that OSP, for as long as he's been fighting, has only been stopped twice. So for me, it feels like this thing could get, even though I actually favor the guy with much less fights, who almost has as many decision wins as OSP with just 7 fights, which is kind of crazy. Even though I favor Jamal Hill if this hits the scorecards, Dan, I do feel like there's so much room for this to get sketchy in between.
Yeah, I mean, look, OSP is a true veteran. This is a guy that's been 5 rounds with the great John Jones. This is a guy that's been in the UFC a long time. He's had, 15 to 20 UFC fights or something like that. So obviously, it's going to be a real test. It's just, is Jamal Hill as good as I think he is? I think so. So let's find out. I mean, Dominic Reyes had the perfect game plan for him. Dominic Reyes has the size. The issue with McCall, not only is McCall a fat light heavyweight, I mean, he's 5'10", fighting at light heavyweight. The guy needs to drop, and he still had a lot of success. And Jamal Hill has got the physical attributes too, not just the fighting. I mean, 6'4" with the 80-inch reach. So he is a big boy too. And a little inside information, because, OSP did this camp in Atlanta, Georgia, under, Muay Thai legend Manu Nato. Shout out to my boy Manu. But Ovince St. Prue's main sparring partner for this fight was Douglas Usher, who, is a good pro fighter, a southpaw middleweight. And Doug Usher is the perfect sparring partner for Michal Oleksiejczuk. Same height, same stance, same kind of style. So, perfect for Michal Oleksiejczuk. Doug Usher is not the perfect training partner for Jamal Hill. Doug Usher is 4 inches shorter. I think his reach is 8 inches shorter. I think that OSP is not getting the right look in the gym for a 6'4" southpaw with an 80-inch reach. And then when we talk about the wrestling, Jamal's got a private All-American working with him, a guy named Brett Martin, who actually might be in the UFC soon. He's a big heavyweight guy who's been trying to lobby to get into the UFC. But bottom line, Jamal's got a heavyweight he's working with, All-American wrestler. So I think that's why his get-up game is so good. So, yeah, I mean, listen, it's understandable to have questions when you're dealing with an 8-0 guy versus OSP. I mean, you saw what happened when Alonzo Menafield, who was like 9-1, fought OSP, but I picked OSP in that spot. I didn't think Alonzo Menafield was ready for him. I think Jamal is. I think Jamal's a special talent. So let's see if I'm overhyping him, or let's see if I'm onto something. Like, you see these guys every once in a while that just stand out. Like last week, Miguel Baeza just like stood out to me. Just like he was minus 155. I was saying he should have been like minus 255. You know what I mean? It's just like certain guys stick out. And I feel like Jamal Hill is one of those guys. And I think Saturday night he's got a big chance to prove it. So let's find out if he's the real deal or not.
Hey, great call on Baeza, by the way, as you hear everybody now parroting the lines that came out from my man here on this here show. So you said it first, my man. I want to give you a nod on that. But yeah, I'll just say this, that I would be very happy for Hill to win here. I came in leaning toward him, and this is not a confident pick, but I'm actually going to pick the veteran here, which I know seems very typical for me and my admitted biases. But I can assure you that's not necessarily the case as to why here. Although it is more ultimately of this is your typical show me spot. I actually don't have an issue with Hill being open as a slight favorite and then the money coming in and moving him to where he's at now. I don't think it's like out of hand now. If it starts getting 2-1, that's where I don't blame people for coming out and saying I'm offended. I'm going to take a shot at. That's your choice to what to do with your money. I'm not confident on this fight, folks, but I am going to pick the veteran here. Not just because it's a classic show me spot, but just two things technically. One thing I don't criticize, even in my prior, which weren't as high praises of Hill. The low hands didn't worry me. This kid really seems to know what he's doing out there and really has a feel for it. It's in his style. And he's you're 6'4", your head's going to kind of be up there anyways. You know what I'm saying? You might as well know how to get used to it. However, Cormier picked something up, which I also kind of saw too, is the right hand, not just keeping low, but retracting low. And as he said that, he got hit with a left hook, and left hooks are the southpaw killer. OSP is 2-1 against fellow southpaws. We only got to see him against Klidson Abreu, that is Hill, against the one UFC level southpaw. Granted, he looked great, obviously. I don't think it's going to be an issue for him, but you brought up the size and length, and I think it'll be less of an issue for OSP. I know he's only had the one fight at heavyweight. I'm not about to glorify that, but the guy has practically been a heavyweight, was fighting like Strikeforce era light heavyweights, even that were like giant back then. Like, he's always faced big guys. He's had a decent amount, again, only 2-1 officially, a lot of switch dancers in there, not a lot of southpaws, a decent amount of southpaws. So I don't know if the height is going to be as much of an issue. And I don't think it's going to be an issue for Hill and his style. I'm just curious to see if he tightens certain things up, because even though I don't criticize Hill's high head and low hands, it works because he's the taller man. Now he's got, arguably one of the biggest light heavyweights in the UFC or in any division standing across from him. So it's undoubtedly a big step up, but I think the left hook, which is the southpaw killer, is going to be live. And the get-up game, I do agree. I love the urgency Jamal Hill showed, even when he was slightly tiring against Darko Stosic. And again, even if he slightly tires in the third round, it's not a condemnation, which is why I favor Hill for the scorecards, because OSP tires, even at his advance and experience edge and all that. He doesn't have the greatest gas tank, right? However, it was the way Hill got up, and he had his arm kind of over here. And what that's lazily, and when it's low enough, the head's low enough, he'll push down, and he's really smart with it. But this is problematic. For one, we've seen OSP shuck and get to kind of rides and will control rounds. I think he lost the Manawa fight, obviously, but I think he ended that first round off of a similar mistake. And when you're lazy with that turning arm and you're not using it to cross wrists, and you're allowing it to be manipulated, we saw with the Oleg Sajek that OSP doesn't even need you to grab guillotines now to set up his Von Preux. It was a different position. Again, Hill's quick to get to the cage, and that's where I see this lazy arm appear. But if OSP is able to ground him and he's not able to fix those lackadaisical tendencies, he is going to be asking to either get head and armed or the involuntary Von Preux choke that OSP has been doing. So for those two reasons, I'm going to go with the vet. I'm not confident, even though I'm on the dog side here. I'm not confident. I think highly of this Hill kid. Even if Hill loses, folks, I'm going to tell you not to condemn him. I do think there's something special here. I don't think Dan's crazy in that regard, and I don't think anyone's crazy for picking Hill.
No, I mean, if I sat here and looked you in the eye with a straight face and said that if Ovens gets on top of him and starts to set up that Von Flue choke, that I'm not going to be worried, I'd be lying to you. You know what I'm saying? So obviously I'm worried about that. But I mean, when you talk about the low hands, I mean, OSP's got low hands too. OSP's got a high chin too. You know what I mean? And also when you talk about show me, well, when you talk about show me, I think about Alonzo Menafield, who had never been past the first round. Show me what happens when you go past the first round, Alonzo Menafield. When you talk about Jimmy Crute, you know, because he had that loss to Misha Serkunov, you know, the times that he had gone past the first round, he'd gassed out. So it's almost like, show me, you know what I mean? You look at Alexander Rakic. He was finishing all these guys. He gassed out bad in that third round against Volkan Oezdemir. Show me. Whereas with Hill, I know it was only Darko Stosic, but he fucking showed me that he can go 3 rounds hard and have that output throughout the 3-round duration. So now it's show me against a top 15 guy. So that's where I'll agree with you. Show me against a top 15 guy, but it's not show me that you have cardio or show me that you can maintain your output or anything like that. It's just show me that you can beat a top 15 guy, period.
Totally agree, which is why if it does get to the scorecards, I actually favor the Rook with 7 fights here.
Featured bout. We got also in the light heavyweight division, by the way, we got Roman Dolidze taking on John Allan. And this should be a hell of a fight while it lasts, man. Obviously, Roman Dolidze, he's got a lot of knockouts on his record, but a lot of people don't know he's a ADCC grappling champion. Actually, pretty damn good with his leg locks too. I heard a rumor he's been doing some work with my boy Coach Nixick, who, you know, shout out to friend of the show, Coach Eric Nixick. Love that guy. And John Allan, I know he had the embarrassing loss to Vinicius Mamouche Morea on Contender Series, but he came back better in that UFC debut against Mike Rodriguez. Now, granted, the fight was overturned. He popped. So did he come back better because he was medically enhanced or not? But here's the thing. When I think about steroid suspensions, I often take the age into consideration, because one that often gets overlooked is, do you remember when Brian Ortega tested positive for steroids in his UFC debut when he choked out Mike De La Torre?
Early on.
The reason I never held it against him, I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't advocate steroid use whatsoever. I'm not for it. You know, I'm a weed guy, you know, not a steroid guy. But the reason I never held it against him at the betting window is because I was like, dude, he's 24, 25, like he'll be okay. Whereas with John Allan, also, you know, he's 25, 26, 27. He's still a kid. But you look at a guy like Vitor Belfort, who's 37, and he can't take his steroids. Well, that's a different story altogether. So I'm kind of not really putting too much stock into Allan popping. I kind of feel like, hey, your masking agent wasn't on point that night, so maybe it will be this Saturday night. You know what I mean? You're only 26, 27. I think he'll be okay in that regard. So I don't think that has anything to do with this fight. What has to do with this fight is who's the tougher guy. I think Dolidze is the tougher guy, but here's what I'm struggling with, Dan Tom. So no one's had the balls to shoot a takedown on Dolidze up until this point, right? Like everyone's been standing and trading with him. And real quick, before I talk about the takedown angle, which I can't wait to talk about, people are discrediting Dolidze because he knocked out Kadis Ibragimov, who a lot of people consider to be like one of the worst fighters on the roster. But guys, don't discredit him for it. When Dawoon Jung fought Kadis Ibragimov, he had to weather a serious storm. When Ed Herman fought Kadis Ibragimov, he lost the first round. When Danilo Marquez fought Kadis Ibragimov, it was a back-and-forth fight. When Roman Dolidze fought Kadis Ibragimov, he just ran through him like it was nothing. So there was no storm to be weathered with him. So I actually give him a lot of credit for that performance. But back to the thing I'm struggling with, Dan Tom. So no one's had the balls to shoot a takedown on Roman Dolidze up until this point. And the reason I bring that up is because, as a grappling champion, I know he's very prideful. So, and not just a grappling champion, a leg lock guy, no less, Dan Tom. You know the fucking deal with these leg lock guys. Is this a situation where if John Allan tries to take him down, that we're going to see some nice takedown defense? We're going to see some, swimming for underhooks. We're going to see a nice heavy sprawl. Or are we going to see an overconfident guy who allows you to take him down because he believes in his leg lock game so much that he'll give up those takedowns and then kind of get stalled out, and will put him in a spot where he doesn't look minus 200? So that's what I'm worried about, Dan Tom. So give us the inside info on Roman Dolidze.
I wish I had some more inside info. You hit on a lot of the great points, though. I haven't touched base with my guy Eric Nixick since their last camp. But yes, coming into the Kadis Ibragimov fight, obviously, yeah, you don't need a rocket scientist to pick against Kadis Ibragimov, but we like to do our due diligence, as do you, Dan, right? So you go through, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that he was here in my backyard working with. And while you were running through the accolades there, I just wanted to confirm some, and I did. And you were absolutely right, sir. I mean, the guy's got Asia, European, and world ADC and grappling credentials kind of across the board. But yes, he even cites himself. He specifically is a fan of the leg lock. So I guess answering your question, it's hard to tell. I haven't admittedly run the comb to give you guys the deep cuts of the pre-UFC fight, the grappling footage and stuff that I do like to poke around if it's relevant. Those are questions I too had, right? However, you mentioned the leg locks. I'm glad you did, Dan, because that is something that I think will be potent. From my memory of prior research, yes, this guy has had him, as far as in his grappling repertoire, right? And the thing is, not only does he have it and he looks the part, right? He's a muscly guy. And I don't know if he's going to have to answer the questions as much less in this fight. I mean, he does have third round finishes to his name. Although, yeah, he is primarily a looks built and resume wise, the early danger. Does he get stalled out after that? I think these are all sensible and logical questions. But I'm not even sure if John Allan goes for the takedown. If he goes for it, A, gets it, B, right? I mean, those are kind of big ifs in their own right. Is he afraid as well, kind of taking cues from the guys he watched before watching tape? Well, they stayed away from a reason. Let's fight a little bit, let's fight a little different than them, perhaps. We'll see. We'll see if he kind of elects to go that route. But let's just say he takes him down, right? I think the leg lock game parlays when you're taking down, especially if that's your number one go-to. And also, Dan, tell me what you think here. And I don't have the stats in front of me, but I bet you if we were to call me out and we're about to unpack the stats on Tapology, if they've got them there or not, I'm willing to say that leg lock defense gets much worse north of 185 pounds. So 185 pounds middleweight folks and up, it gets much worse. Why? Because submissions are much worse. Submissions are much worse because submission knowledge is generally much worse. Submission knowledge is much worse is because submission mobility, both offensively and defensively, is generally much worse, right? Which is why you get heavyweights like, not just Verdum being Verdum, obviously, but what does he do? He does deep half stuff. He does light guy stuff, right? Just like in boxing, Mike Tyson, apropos, right? The heavyweights that do the small guy stuff, why do they have a big edge no matter what the combat sport is? It's because technical mobility and movement is not a big thing. So if Dolidze is as advertised, and if he's forced to draw that out, I don't even trust John Allan to get out of the low percentage submissions, in other words.
I got 3 words for you regarding middleweights and leg locks. Husimar, Toquinho, Palhares. Yeah,
he found something he was good at, which is, of course, middleweight meta. But what was the operative factor? The offense was working really well, but what wasn't working well in those equations? Unless it was, of course, our man, Alan Belcher, of course, Dan, you know that.
But how could I forget?
Defense. It's still not a high point.
I mean, listen, Nate Marquardt showed one way, grease up your legs, but Alan Belcher actually showed a way better way, and he even made a DVD series showing how to escape the leg lock to the T. So Alan Belcher, props to him. But anyways, one thing I wanted to bring up, Dolidze actually tapped out Nikita Krylov in a grappling tournament in under a minute with a heel hook. So he's been in there with some guys. So now, now there's punches involved. So let's see what happens. I'm going to roll with Dolidze here. I was I'll be honest, I usually don't talk about who I'm betting, but I was about to pull the trigger on Dolidze, and I still think he's gonna win the fight. I'm just kind of like, I just have those questions. What I brought to the table about, if Allan decides to shoot on him. I mean, Allan landed like 3-4 takedowns his last fight, but again, Emrod is a different story. Emrod isn't this, grappling champion. So I'm just very curious what happens if Allan decides to take him down, because Allan's one of these guys, he's got that shooter box style. He kicks hard, he punches hard. He's got a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He trains with all those good guys. He's decently well-rounded. He's just a good, solid, average guy. I can't really say too much bad about John Allan, besides the steroids. But aside from that, I'm just curious what happens if he tries to take down Dolidze. But from what I've seen, Dolidze is an absolute beast on the mat, and he's got knockout power too. So, and he's very, very confident. And to take it a step further, these guys from Georgia, I ain't talking about the ATL where I'm from, because I mean, our guys are winning too for the most part. But these guys from the country of Georgia, they're on quite the roll right now. So I'll roll with the Georgian. I'll go with Dolidze.
Yeah, man, it's hard to go against them Georgians right now for sure. They've been doing a lot of winning. And I'll just add it. I didn't talk a lot about John Allan. I apologize for that. Again, I still got to do my deep cuts of this. That being said, peeking behind the curtain, when I already submitted my staff picks here for the main card for MMA Junkie, I did pick Dolidze. He's obviously my heavy lean here. And simply put, like John Allan, like he's young, he's with shootbox, he's in a region obviously familiar with MMA, Brazil folks, but like when we talk about ceilings, like I'm technically picking against Hill and I'm technically picking against Allan. Hill's ceiling is way up here. That's why I say don't condemn him regardless of what happens. Whereas Allan, even if he wins and upsets, I mean, he's gonna have to do something really impressive to impress me, because what I've seen so far, I don't feel like the guy's gonna have the biggest ceiling, and I'm trying to be ultra respectful by saying that.
All right, my friend. Well, I think we're both on the Georgian Dolidze. So let's keep the show rolling. So next up in the flyweight division, this is going to be really exciting, Dan Tom, because we got the UFC debut of Jimmy the Brick Flick, and he's taking on my good friend and Best Fight Pick sponsored athlete, Cody Durden, and Cody's moving down to 125. This is such an amazing fight, man. I mean, listen, we'll take my bias aside for Cody Durden. He's a friend of mine. I had Jimmy the Brick Flick on Half the Battle back when he upset Johnny Bedford on the regional scene. I'm a fan of this guy too. I love Jimmy Flick. I mean, Jimmy Flick's a transition master. He is one of the most opportunistic submission guys in the flyweight division. You mess around on the mat with a guy like Jimmy Flick, and I mean, he's the kind of guy that will transition arm bars to triangles to omoplatas to the whole bit. I mean, like literally, it's some of the most beautiful stuff you've ever seen when this kid's on the mat. So I think that Jimmy Flick is going to get a lot of submission wins in the UFC. And if they still have the submission of the night bonus, I think that every single time he gets a submission, it would be a lock that he'd get that bonus. But now it's performance of the night, which I actually like kind of more, because like if the knockout was more impressive than the submission, why give it to the submission? Give it to the most impressive performance. So I like the performance bonus better than, just KO or sub, because think about it this way. If there was no knockout on the card, then only one, and there was only one submission, only one guy's getting a bonus instead of two. Whereas now you got performance of the night. There's no, like, you see what I'm saying here? Like if only one guy got a submission and no one got a knockout, then no one's getting a bonus. You know what I'm saying? Only the submission guy is. So performance of the night, now everybody's getting paid. So that being said, I think that Jimmy Flick's got a lot of holes in his stand-up and evidence of the fact that he's been knocked out 4 times in his career. And I do think he's getting better. I think that he actually hired a private Muay Thai coach. I think that, he's been trying to improve on all areas of his game. He definitely earned his opportunity to be in the UFC. And I think he's going to go on to win a lot of fights, no doubt about it. It's just that I think he's kind of got a tough matchup here in Cody Durden. When you talk about a guy like Durden, he fought Chris Gutierrez on a week short notice up a weight class, okay? And, when you talk about a guy like Gutierrez, you remember that kid Vince Morales? Yep. The one that got leg kick TKO'd by Chris Gutierrez. Yeah. Vince Morales tweeted only last week that now he can walk again. You understand what I'm saying? That's how goddamn hard Chris Gutierrez kicks. Durden goes in there on a week short notice off the couch. And let me preface this, because if you look at his record, you see, well, what do you mean off the couch? He fought 2 weeks prior to the Gutierrez fight. Guys, he knocked out John Sweeney in the first round. Then he got drunk, ate a bunch of chicken wings, was binging on wings and beer throughout the whole weekend, not expecting any kind of call. And then after that binge, you put on a nice little 15, 20 pounds. Then they're like, hey, Cody, you want to fight Chris Gutierrez on a week short notice? So obviously he was like, hell yeah, I want to be in the UFC. But, he didn't really know who Chris was. I had to be like, dude, that's like the hardest kicker in the division besides Marlon Moraes. Like, so for people that are in the know, they'd be like, I'm not so sure I want to fight Chris Gutierrez. But, Cody, he didn't know who the hell the guy was. So he's like, yeah, I'll take the fight. Goes to a draw with Chris Gutierrez up a weight class on a week notice, gets a 10-8 in the first round. And if you think that fight is an indicator of his cardio, it's not. I mean, it's an indicator of drinking beer and eating chicken wings after celebrating a big win the week prior. You know what I mean? Still had the wherewithal to go to the draw. Now he's got the full camp. Now he went to the Performance Institute, had all the tests run on him. They let him know, all kinds of shit that I don't even know the half of, man. Like they got him on the nutrition system trifecta, and they're so intricate with their details. I mean, we're not just talking about like, body fat percentage or this or that. We're talking about like what temperature you should set your room at. We're talking about like how many almonds you should eat. Like, dude, the shit is so intricate that they got him on. You know what I mean? So he's going to come in here lean and mean. He's going to have the cardio to push for 3 straight rounds. Now, if Cody was really arrogant and he told me that I'm going to go out there and I'm going to submit Jimmy Flick, I would facepalm. I'd be like, dude, what the hell are you talking about? I mean, don't get me wrong. Cody is a state champion wrestler here in Georgia. He's a purple belt under Honjucao Carnero. It's not like he's some slouch on the mat, but Cody's not a dummy. Cody knows what he's got to do. Cody's going to keep this fight standing. He's going to actually do the Chris Gutierrez game plan. He's going to calf kick a guy like Jimmy the Brick Flick. He's going to make Jimmy get desperate for the takedowns, and it's going to be Jimmy that's going to be shooting from a mile out on a state champion wrestler. If Jimmy can get him down and can submit him, God bless him. I just don't think so. I think it's going to be very tough to take down a Durden that doesn't want to be taken down. Take down a Durden that doesn't want to exchange on the mat. Durden will save his wrestling for another fight. Match Durden up with another striker, then you'll get to see his grappling again. But in this specific fight, you're going to get to see the stand-up of Cody Durden. And this is a guy who he had a pro boxing fight, a pro kickboxing fight, and a pro MMA fight all on the same night. Actually, in Colorado, where our producer Jordan's from, Justin Gaethje was actually the host. They gave Cody Durden a $10K for that. He won that tournament. So this guy's got pro boxing experience. He's got pro kickboxing experience. He's the state champ wrestler. Cody Durden, I will be shocked if Cody Durden comes out here and initiates grappling with a guy like Flick. We know how good Flick is. We respect Flick on the mat. I think Cody Durden's going to keep this fight standing, and I think he's going to hand Jimmy Flick his 5th knockout loss.
Man, that's some awesome inside information you gave there, Dan. Not talking about the stuff prior, which you also gave on the last time, Durden made his appearance. And let me just preface that I still have about another fight or two that I want to watch. I'm in the middle of taping this fight, but I kind of already have my lean here, and don't be surprised to see this end up on the Line Movement MMA betting sheet. Of course, my weekly betting sheet, which you can find at linemovement.com. Because yeah, man, there's not a lot of spots that I like, or even the dogs. And I picked a lot of dogs, by the way, already here, folks. That I'm, admittedly like the most uber confident on. And I'm not going to say that like I'm the most confident in this, because kind of like Dan said, like if Jimmy Flick gets this to the ground, especially in the first round, you best believe that, any Durden bettors will be sweating, regardless of whether or not he escapes. There's going to be some sweating. I mean, this guy chambers his Flick, that is, he chambers his submissions like a machine gun. This guy is one of the few guys, again, not just, being biased for a guy here like Dan is. Like Flick is legit. He's one of the few guys who earned an A+ on my grading the winner series for his contender series fight. However, he reminds me of who's that guy? He fought at featherweight. I think he might have been a Jimmy as well. He fought like Nam Pham. He was a judo submission guy. White kid from Jersey.
Oh, Jim Hedis.
Jim Hedis. Yeah, Jimmy Hedis. He kind of reminds me of Jimmy Hedis a little bit. And obviously, Jimmy Hedis was more judo and jiu-jitsu, whereas Jimmy Flick is wrestling and jiu-jitsu. Flick's got some decent wrestling himself, folks. He'll chain off. He chains out. You know, he channels his inner Oklahoma spirit. You know what I'm saying? Like, so he can wrestle too. But I guess maybe I compared him to Hedis, and I like Hedis, by the way. But because there seems to be a fragility that comes with this game, you know, as fun as the offense is, there's no free lunch. Everything's a two-way street in life, as well as MMA, folks. And when things come back on the other side of the street, mainly in the form of strikes, we've seen them fold, right? Ray Rodriguez, shouts to him from San Antonio. We went back to watch that fight. And you know, we saw him kind of crumble there. And you can say, well, that Ray Rodriguez fights or some of these TKO fights, we lost by TKO, Flick, they were at bantamweight, and this guy's a flyweight. Well, Cody Durden's fought at bantamweight, had to fight at bantamweight too, folks, as we've seen for his UFC debut. And Cody Durden, with his size and dimension, plus he added his wrestling strength, I got to imagine whether you're at bantamweight or you're fighting him down at flyweight, where this fight is scheduled, I got to imagine Durden's still going to feel like a bantamweight and look like a bantamweight in there if you look at his dimensions and his size. So I don't think that's any kind of saving grace for Flick that this fight is at flyweight. In other words, and again, I don't just, you know, I picked against Hill. I picked against guys that, you know, my boy here, my co-host Dan Levy here has been high on. You know, I respect his opinion, but again, folks, I feel we're pretty good about, you know, calling out our own biases and, you know, not just going off of like an echo chamber here. So I'm not afraid to dissent by any means. I've dissented on this very show. That being said, I'm with Durden and I'm with my man Dan on this one. Kind of like, I think, yeah, we're exactly on the last one. And even though it wasn't a win, I believe that Durden at least proved his mettle on why people like Dan Levy here were high on him coming into the UFC. I think he gets his first UFC win here as well.
I mean, we picked a plus 240 dog and he went to a draw. I mean, would you rather pick a minus 300 favorite that goes to a draw or a plus 240 dog that goes to a draw? We were on the value side there, my man. So, yeah. Now, go ahead, my friend.
I was just going to say last thing. Yeah, basically early. If you can get past the earliness of Flick, that's going to be it's going to be good once you get into rounds 2 or 3 for Durden. So that's the basic dynamic. Give me Durden.
Yeah, I mean, I would just love it if he didn't grapple with him, period.
Yeah,
but I mean, listen, a fight's a fight. You can throw a kick and slip and fall on the ground. All of a sudden, you got Jimmy Flick on top of you. So it's not like we're dealing with a novice on the mat here with Cody Durden. It's just that, you know, if Cody tries to pursue takedowns or Cody tries to show that, hey, I can submit Jimmy Flick, then I'd be like, dude, like what are you doing, man? Like stop. Like, you know, it's not that I don't believe in your grappling. We've already mentioned he's a purple belt under Zhukov. Zhukov's a serious black belt. He's a state champ wrestler. It's not like Cody can't grapple. It's just that why even give Jimmy Flick a chance to win this fight when we know how goddamn good he is in that realm. So let's take him out of his comfort zone and whoop his ass. So I'm going Cody Durden here. Let's see what happens. Now, this one I'm very excited for because in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Ilia Topuria. Speaking of the Georgians, we got Georgia's own Ilia Topuria. He's taking on Damon the Leech Jackson. This is such a great fight because Topuria, I actually picked him against the law. You know, I bet him, I think, around the plus 140 to plus 160 range. And he is a wrestling machine, and he answered a lot of questions in that last fight he had against the law because he had never been the distance prior to that. So I don't know if you recall, but the only adversity he had overcome, I mentioned his fight before his UFC debut. He was in there with a 6'1" guy, got dropped with a head kick, still gets back up, knocks the guy out in the first round. So he's tough as nails, but we never knew what happens if a fight goes 3 rounds. Well, he takes the Zalal fight on a week notice, Dan Tom. He dominates Zalal. He's chaining submission after submission, takedown after takedown. And he was kind of tired in that 3rd round. And he wasn't tired because of what Zalal was doing. He was tired from whooping Zalal's ass. You remember that fight between Shane Carwin and Brock Lesnar? Shane Carwin didn't gas because of what Brock Lesnar did. Shane Carwin gassed from whooping ass. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what happened to Topuria a little bit. And he still had the wherewithal to get that takedown in the last minute. So these are the kind of guys I like to invest in. And here with Damon Jackson, look, I respect him. He's a serious vet of the game. He used to be in the UFC back in the day. PFL, LFA. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's opportunistic. He's got some nasty submissions in his arsenal. You saw that fight with Bektic. But that fight with Bektic was just another third-round Bektic stunt. How many times have you seen Bektic pull a stunt? Back in the Chas Skelly fight, which I'll take this one to the grave. I mean, Chas Skelly knocked out Mirsad Bektic, but back then they had the rule about the downed opponent. So, you know, they took away a point. Whereas if that's in today's rule set, that's a second round TKO for Chas Skelly. Darren Elkins knocked him out fair and square. Josh Emmett knocked him out with a jab. You remember the Dan Ige stunt. And then most recently, Damon Jackson, after dominating him, after having like a 70-20 strike differential, goes out there and gets caught in a guillotine choke. So I view this as a similar situation minus the stunt. You know what I'm saying? As long as Topuria doesn't do anything stupid, he's winning this fight. I feel like the only path to victory for Jackson is the comeback finish, whether it's a comeback knee, a guillotine, just something like that. Jackson is not going to control this fight from start to finish. Jackson is not going to win rounds in this fight. Jackson's only chance is some kind of opportunistic finish, which, I mean, the guy's got 18 wins under his belt. He's very capable. He can do it. I mean, Topuria's undefeated. First L time's always around the corner, but I don't think Saturday night's going to be the night he takes his first L. I think we got a rising star on our hands, Dan Tom. I love this kid Topuria, and I'm taking him here. And similar to the Flick fight, I wouldn't be surprised if Topuria came out here and tried to test his stand-up. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if Topuria was like, why even give this guy a chance to choke me out? Let's go out here and knock him out. You know what I mean? But if he goes back to his wrestling roots, which he's so damn confident in, I favor him there as well. Just don't leave your neck exposed. So I got Ilia Topuria here via domination.
Hey, for those who have done the tape, you'll know that Topuria has knocked out a tall guy before. So you're right. It wouldn't be that much.
And this tall man has been knocked out before too, by the way.
That is very true too. And I don't want to take anything away from Damon Jackson, aka Walt Goggins, who is one of those guys. Like, I love seeing these regional grinders who's they're not even used as like UFC stepping stone, Dan. They're like almost used as like regional stepping stones. I love seeing those guys get their day, and then even more so get that UFC win. That being said, not trying to take anything away from Damon Jackson. You nailed it, dude. I mean, I think I tweeted that out. And said it on the show. That was a night where everybody was giving away guillotines. What was another like minus 300? The Canadian kid that gave away the guillotine as well that same very night. Like, it was just one of those. You're right, exactly like you said. It was a stunt filled night, and I feel like this breakdown is pretty much the same as the last one minus the stunt. You know, it's going to be essentially can he stay out of that guillotine from Damon Jackson, and I think he can if he's on the ground. And B, he can also strike on the feet. I'm not going to go into it too much, as you know, I'm on the same side as you hear. And even when he didn't have the big minus money, when, like Dan said, he had the big plus money. Again, you heard it on this show here. Surprise, surprise. Me and Dan were on the same side of a dog that hit. I know, that's crazy. So I'm not going to get too self-congratulatory or be like echo chambery. But like, yeah, dude, I completely sentiment with you on this one. So I'll keep it short.
Now, last but not least, we got Mexico's Jose Teco Quinonez taking on Hawaii's Louis the Last Samurai Smolka. And I honestly don't remember if we broke this fight down the first time it was supposed to happen. So I actually have no idea if we're on the same side or not, because we've broken down so many damn fights that, like, I have no idea. But I think there might be a chance we're on opposite sides here, but let's find out. So this is an interesting fight. You know, Louis Smolka, I got a lot of respect for him. He's a guy that, you know, if you try to get into unnecessary scrambles with a guy like Louis Smolka, I want to see Smolka versus Flick. I have to see Louis Smolka versus Flick before it's all said and done. And Flick versus Tim Elliott and, you know, all those kind of fights. If Ray Borg was still in the UFC, you know, Ray Borg versus Flick, like, imagine how amazing that'd be. But anyways, Smolka's the kind of guy that will literally give up takedowns just so he can scramble out of bad positions. And then when he gets on top, he's very heavy, very good ground and pound, opportunistic with his submissions, tough Hawaiian warrior. I got a lot of respect for the guy. When you talk about Jose Quinonez, he's not really a guy that sells out and kind of like Smolka does. And when I say sell out, I don't mean sell out like, like you don't cuss on your albums anymore. I mean, sell out, like give up bad position. You know what I mean? Just so you can scramble out. He doesn't do shit like that. Tecco is more disciplined. He kind of has like a Mexican Dominic Cruz style is what I like to call it. Very heavy on the feints, good kicking game, just stays disciplined. I mean, when you think that he's going to keep kicking, that's when he mixes in level changes. He's got very good takedowns, and he actually should have won Tough Latino America, the same season Yair was on when he fought Alejandro Perez, but I think he was deducted like 2 points, and it actually might have cost him that tough title. So I think that's what happened. I might be completely wrong, but I think he got deducted 2 points, and that's why he ended up losing to Alejandro. Because I remember watching that fight thinking he clearly beat Alejandro, but my boy Alejandro Turbo Perez with those weasel ways, he just knows how to win those. He knows how to win those decisions, man. So Tecco got weaseled that night, but since that point, Tecco's the one that's been doing the weaseling. I mean, aside from guys like Nathaniel Wood and Sean O'Malley, who are on the cusp of the top 15. I mean, you know what Sean O'Malley and Nathaniel Wood would do to Louis Smolka. They throw him out. They throw him out the octagon. You know what I'm saying? So I just feel like Tecco beats the guys he's supposed to beat. And I got questions about Louis Smolka's dedication to the game, man. I mean, it's one thing to miss weight for flyweight. I know flyweight's the toughest cut in the history of the sport, my man. But to miss for bantamweight when you move up a weight class, like that's that's something else, man. You know what I mean? To miss weight up a weight class. Now, granted, Dan Tom, I know he's not 22 anymore. I know he's almost 30. So it's getting tough. It's getting tougher to make that weight. But he was out here on YouTube doing those. I forget what the fuck they're called. Our producer Jordan knows. It's called mukbang or something like that. These like eating things. He's been eating a lot. All right, let's just leave it at that. He's been eating a lot. So, and I was thinking to myself, like, dude, like, why are you posting these videos of like you eating these big feasts? And aren't you about to fight Casey Kenny? And then he gets finished in the first round by Casey Kenny. Still posting those videos, comes in, misses weight at 135 against Tecco the first time. Now he's fighting him 2 weeks later. Look, I don't care if he makes weight or doesn't make weight. I just don't think his head's in the game. And Smolka is one of those guys that's got to be all in. I know Tecco's all in. Tecco's got a kid on the way. You go on Tecco's Instagram, and he's not just running his miles, he's sprinting his miles. You know what I mean? So I see the Mexican Dominic Cruz coming out here, getting Smolka to bite on those feints, mixing in the level changes, taking him down, not getting into unnecessary scrambles. Look, the big criticism for Tecco is his chin. And I've talked about this every time I break down a Tecco fight. It's because on the regional scene, this guy's a 135er. He fought Davi Ramos, who's a 155er. He got knocked out in devastating fashion when they fought. So since that point, he gets wobbled every single fight, and he might get wobbled here too. But Smolka doesn't have that one-hitter quitter, man. If Smolka's going to knock someone out, I mean, aside from Ryan Main Event McDonald, who was getting knocked out by guys with losing records on the regional scene, Lewis is going to get on top of you and pound you out. So I see Tecco just kind of outworking him, kind of having a disciplined MMA clinic type attack here, mixing the takedowns, kind of outpoint him standing, go out here, cruise to a decision. I got Tecco for the upset.
Yeah, man, it's tough. I can't remember either. I still got to do a little bit of refreshing tape for this one. But I do believe that I picked Tecco, actually, believe it or not. And after seeing Smolka miss weight and the flags that you said, the flags that frankly were kind of already there, dude, it's so hard to back my guy Smolka here. And I'm a big Smolka fan. Hawaii's been on a rough streak. We just took, 3 L's last weekend. Granted, I picked, I picked and played against 2 of those 3, so I didn't mind. But still, it sucks to see, whether I'm on the side of it or not. It sucks to see my Hawaiian brothers and sisters lose. People don't exactly speak too kindly of them before or after the results anyways. So maybe it's a little bit of a sadness hedge here, as my guy Phil McKenzie likes to say. But I'm actually going to go with Tecco. I think that if he can avoid the knockout, which again, it was not just to pick on Ryan McDonald in his sample size, but if you remember, it was a lot of body punching. And it was a lot of blatant body punching that McDonald just didn't have an answer for. I don't think it's going to be the same sort of thing. Again, I got to refresh tape. I don't remember ever Tecco being rocked to the body. It's usually more to the chin, like Dan says, unless Smolka is able to, I don't think it was Richie Smolin, but who was that pro surfer Australian guy? He got him with the head hit him in the head with the sidekick, I think. Like, unless he hits one of those things again, like one of those freak, like
Richie Vaz
moves. Richie Vaz, there we go. Unless he hits another one of those things again, which is, as much as I love the sidekick, you know what I'm saying as well, folks. No hate here, just saying, low percentage. Man, I think it's a really tough road for Smolka. Quinonez is scrappy in position, so he's hard to submit, even though he's not going to blow you away with his resume or accolades in the grappling department. So yeah, man, I'm gonna go with deflating, depressing, at least for me as a Smolka fan. Decision loss for Smolka, picking Quinonez by decision.
Wow, I'm surprised. Did you pick Smolka the first time? I don't remember.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm actually pretty sure I remember picking Quinonez just because I can't trust Smolka. Okay. But with the Hawaiians going on a skid, it almost makes me want to pick Smolka more, just so they can get one, But being real here, I try to be with you guys every time. I feel like Quinonez more by a decision is a safer bet, and looks like you're getting plus money on the guy for you gamblers out there.
And you didn't even mention my girl Ostovich.
Yeah, man. I know. I said she was with the three. She was with the group of three that I talked about. That
okay, yeah. Not trying to add insult to injury.
No. And again, I picked against Rachel. I picked against two of the three, right? The only one I picked and was on was Kai. But either way, whether I picked him or was on him or not, I got a heart. I want to see him. I want to see him do well. But yeah, man, I'm trying to be unbiased as a better here for y'all as well, man. And yeah, I think Quinonez will take it by decision.
Well, Dan, Tom, that about wraps it up. Truly want to thank you for joining me on this very special UFC Vegas 16 edition of the Line Movement MMA betting show. Thank you very much, Dan Tom. All the fans, make sure y'all follow my boy Dan Tom at Dan Tom MMA. I can be followed at Best Fight Picks. Make sure y'all subscribe to Line Movement. Go to linemovement.com. Give this video a like, give it a subscribe. We're also on Apple Podcasts. Make sure our Canadian listeners hit up blitzbet.eu. Also, big thank you to our fans, our listeners, our supporters. You guys don't know how much we truly appreciate everything. If y'all could hook us up with a share, a retweet, a like, whatever the case may be, we truly appreciate that. And then also, shout out to everybody behind the scenes. Our producer, Jordan. Thank you very much, Jordan. Joe, Brian, Dan, Nick, James, everybody else. I know I'm forgetting a few, but it's nothing personal. I was going to say it's nothing personal. It's just punishment, just like Chaos Williams says nowadays, but that's not very fitting right now. So, no, love all you guys. Thank you guys very, very much. Dude, how fucking excited are you for Chaos Williams versus Michelle Pereira?
About as excited as I am for Thick Willie versus Alonzo Menafield, but yeah, I'm excited for some chaos and Pereira.
Wait, did you just say that William Knight's fighting Alonzo Menafield?
Yeah.
Holy shit. That is going to be someone's going to be snoring in the center of that octagon. They're going to have to bring out the smelling salts. So I'm very excited about that too, my friend. But anyways, thank you to everybody behind the scenes. Thank you so much to all our listeners, our fans, our supporters. We truly appreciate you guys. We'll be back next week for the next fight card. I hope you all enjoy the fight. Stay safe, and we will speak soon. Hey guys, if you like what you see, make sure you hit the subscribe button and check us out at linemovement.com.